So if you choose not to decide,
You still make a choice.
you still have made a choice, okay? And that's the lyrics of the song?
That's part of the chorus of the song.
All right, well, that's,
And the last line, I mean, that's the verses of the song, and the last line of each verse is, I mean, each chorus is, I will choose free will.
okay. Just have to admit that a lot of these groups of singers have got insight, haven't they? They got the divine insight. Okay, I'm going to continue with something we talked about last week, and I mentioned it at the end, and of course, I was shocked that hardly anyone was familiar with that term. Kirby, were you and Beverly familiar with the term Urim and Thummim?
I was, but I didn't see it and understand it the way you were putting it, but I have, yes.
Okay. Anyway, so I actually made a note. I actually wanted to bring that out and kind of use it to get back on the same thing we was talking about last week, talk about dreams. How many of you ever had a dream? And of course, everybody's had dreams. Now, but the content of dreams, what are dreams about? You know, a lot of people slough it off as the pizza, had too much beer, whatever, caused you to have a dream, and that could be true. But dreams generally are more than that. Generally, dreams are about you, even though there may be other characters in the dream. Generally, the dream is about you. It's about something that deals with you individually, no matter who's in the dream. And so I remember I had mentioned that I had heard someone on teaching talking about how the dreams were actually the body's way of repairing itself. And by that, they gave an illustration how that if you've ever had a dream that caused you to be in fear, that what that dream was doing was releasing certain drugs in your physical body to do repair work or different work. Or if you had a dream that was really happy or whatever, then it's releasing a different chemical. So the dream knows how to go into your drug department, drugstore, and open up the physical body in a way that we don't consciously know how to do. But subconsciously or unconsciously, the dreams do that and can do that. And, you know, scientifically and medically, they've proven these things to be true. So the dream is about you. Many times it's about doing repair work or healing or different things that's happening within your being. And so, you know, I've had a lot of people over the years come to me about their dreams or ask me about dreams. And some dreams I can give you insight if I have any, and others I'm lost as you are about it. Something that you have to work on, like my own, you know. And sometimes I'm confused. Well, why did I have that dream, or what's that dream about? And sometimes I can't even remember the dream, but I think I had one. I don't know if I've ever been there, but that's me. I've had a dream. I think I had a dream. And then some of them I remember, you know. And just so happened I had one last night, and I remembered it really well because it woke me up early this morning. And so, again, coming back to the dreams and what they are about, the content of them is what they're doing inside you. Sometimes the dream can be something that is a confirming thing or something that is directing, okay? It may be giving directions or whatever. But there are a lot of different things about dreams, okay? The Scripture's got a lot of stuff about dreams, and you're aware of that, I'm sure you are. But last week we talked about the Urim and the Thummim, and so I wanted to talk about that in just a few minutes, a little bit, because I wanted to weave in something about the Urim, and because the Urim actually comes from the same Hebrew word for light, and the same word for curse is the word light, light. And the same word for Ararat is light, light, with a tav at the end of it to indicate time. So there's so much confusion with translations in the Scripture, and then when you go back to the original language or go back to ancient Hebrew and look at it, you begin to have a completely different idea of what the book that we call the Bible is about. And so I want to read from Alvin Boyd Kuhn, And again, he's one of my favorite authors. This is his last book that he wrote in his mid-80s. And he was known as one of the most profound, prolific writers that's lived in the last 100 years. And his writings are sometimes difficult to read and to understand because he's very wordy. Sometimes that bothers people. He's very wordy. So when you read him, you almost have to have a dictionary to read him. I mean, he's just that way. But many times when you look up the usage of the words, you realize, okay, that is a perfect word to communicate, because he can say in one word what it would take a paragraph to try to explain that one word. But if you know that, then it helps his book to flow better. But this book, entitled A Rebirth for Christianity, what he is saying about that with the rebirth for Christianity is he's saying that the early years of Christianity, and let me explain, the early years of Christianity go back to about 300 or 400 BC to around 326 AC, or the Common Era CE. So, and of course, when I say that, Christianity says, because Christianity wasn't born until Jesus was. That's not true. Because you can go back and find the Essenes were actually the first people to call themselves Christians or Christed ones. They understood the Christ, which come from the Hellenistic Jews. Hellenistic Jews just simply means that these were Jews that no longer used the ancient language of Hebrew. They began to use the Greek language and the Greek mythology. And the Essenes were a group of people who moved out away from common folks and lived among themselves, and they were a multicultural group of people. Not a whole lot said about them, but of course, if any of you are familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls are attributed to being hid by the Essenes. They're the ones that hid them in the caves and different places that they were later found. So Christianity was a fire, literally a fire, like a field ablaze for like 600 or so years. And then Christianity come under the rulership of Catholicism. The Catholic Church gained dominancy of it in 326 with the Council of Nicaea and the creed that they made from that council. And that creed was concocted, and most Christians believe that creed to be the truth when it's not. It's basically ideas that the Catholic Church, trying to make a book, and in other words, this book we call the Bible, trying to make this a history book and a book literally about people when never was it that at all. Now that's difficult, because if we read it and look at it as a history book, it really don't serve you very well. Most people who read it and look at it as a history book, they're really mad at God for what he did in the Old Testament, because he was a murderer. He cared nothing about children. He cared nothing about women. Had no use for children and women at all. And he only had one special love, and that was with a certain group of people, who most people think God still has that love affair going with this group of people. All of these are lies, but yet we have been taught to embrace them, and we do embrace them with a fervency. The only reason we do is that's all we know. Now, I've come at a different approach with this book, because of all the years of my study and research, I found out this is actually a metaphysical book about the physical body. So that the characters that you read about in this book, starting from Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, Moses, every character in this book is about you, it's about the organs of your physical body, it's about how your body is designed to function as God's house and dwelling place. That should not be hard for us to comprehend and grasp. That should be common sense. But it's not, because most of us have been taught so against a metaphysical or a spiritual approach. Most of us have been taught to take it literally and historically. And of course, you've heard my testimony many, many times. My years, 40 plus years ago, when I first met Finest Jennings David, And Dalton would just constantly, I was a student of his, and he would just constantly reprimand me, tomfoolery, Lynn, you ask too many questions. And I just wanted to know, because what he was saying was, to me, was speaking out of two sides of his mouth. So he would say, partly take it spiritually, partly take it literally. Which is it? You know, is it one or the other? Can't be both and da 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 da. So those were my questions and my problems, and I found, to me, it works perfectly well if I look at it as a book about the physical anatomy. And you know, I can find that everywhere, in every character, on every page. So anyway, this is a book where Alvin Boyd Kuhn was actually vying for the very thing I'm talking about. He wanted to take the Bible and bring it back to its original place, and Christianity to its original standing. That's why he calls this book A Rebirth for Christianity. I highly recommend it, but it is a difficult read, and I promise you it will challenge you. And again, he is, again, a linguist, so you have to read him with a dictionary. So let me just read this, something he said here, and then we're going to kind of jump off from here and see what we get into. It says, the germ of divinity, and actually when he uses this word germ, I have a little definition because I write it in his books. The germ would be a spark or a flicker of light that came from the source of light. And all of you have heard me teach Genesis 2:7, where God formed man out of the dust. The Hebrew word for dust is afar, and it don't mean dirt. It means particles of light. And so now science, quantum science, has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt you are a light vessel. Everything about you is light. Your cells are made up of light. And that's exactly what the Hebrew word afar means, particles of light. So that would be a germ of light. So a germ would be a spark of, or a flicker of light that came from the source of light into all humanity to life it, L-I-F-E. So where does the L-I-F-E that you live come from? It comes from the light, the source that light is. So here's what Alvin Boyd Kuhn says. The germ of divinity implanted in the human constitution was crucified, went to its death, was buried, and rose again, even on the third day, to return to the Father, according to all esoteric legendry. Now that's the story of Jesus that most people would take literally. But he's not referring to it as the story of Jesus that was taken literally. He's talking about it esoterically. So he's referring, esoteric just simply means inward, something that's happening in you, not exoteric or outside of you. All of this takes place inside you. So he says, crucified, went to his death, buried, and rose again after the third day and returned to the Father according to all the esoteric legendry. The Greeks did not need to hypothesize a man to yield them to understanding or to afflate the consciousness of a miracle-working power of a deific fire of the soul in all mortals. Their definition of ho Christos was a psychological potency active in the human constitution that was itself the agent of their regeneration. Now, to say what he said medically, I would have to say it this way, that your pineal gland, working with your pituitary gland, produces a fluid, and that fluid is an oil. That oil is called the Christos. And that oil goes from the very center of your brain, flows down your spinal column to the sacrum at the very base of your spine, and every time you breathe, that sacrum works just like a pump, and it pumps. That sacrum is called the Santa Claus. Sacred claws is a pump that pumps the fluid back up the chimney or back up the spine into your brain. That's how your body works. And so when you're sleeping, many times in your dreams, that's exactly what this pharmacy that's inside you, that's produced by all of these glands inside your body, pumps these fluids throughout your body, doing restoration work, doing repair work. The Greeks knew this. This was a mythological story about the Christos. And in Hebrew, it's called Mashiach. Same word. One of them is a Hebrew word, one of them is a Greek word. Both words refer to this oil. And this oil is in every human being that lives. It's in your spinal column, it's in your brain. It works up and down the chimney. Thus the story of Santa Claus. Okay, that's where that story comes from now. That's why it comes down the chimney and goes back out the chimney. That's what it brings gifts. Those gifts are to your physical body. Anyway, that's an ancient story. So the Greeks didn't need to hypothesize this. Their definition of ho Christos was a psychological potency active in the human constitution that was itself the agent of their regeneration. The knowledge of its presence and psychic dynamism within the sphere of their own control was the cogent spur of self-realization. So anyway, that's Alvin Boyd Cook. And to me, that's a tremendous book. If anybody wants to get that in Rebirth of Christianity, I highly recommend you read it. This is a note I wrote week before last, and I wanted to elaborate on this a little bit. The most important or the greatest thing that we can learn in life is to know who we are. Now, most of us spend a lifetime time to get to know somebody else. You get to know your spouse, you get to know your kids, you get to know this, you get to know that. But we hardly ever get to know me. Oh, uno numerano self. And that's the one that you got to get to know. If we don't get to know who we are, who am I? What am I made up of? What are the ingredients that make me me? That's what we need to know. It's hard to be anything to anybody if I don't even know who I am to myself. I'm pretty well lost before I get started. How many of you have had really good advice for somebody else and you can't give yourself any advice? Have you ever been there and done that? I mean, it's a pretty common thing. So I want to just take one scripture and open up common scripture that we all know. You can all quote it, Genesis 1:27. And I want to look at this because it don't say what we have all been taught that it does say. Okay? And it's where literalist Christianity comes from. It's probably the root from the literalist historical concept of Christianity comes from. Their precepts are built on this scripture, misuse of this scripture. So Genesis 1:27, so God created man, that's Adam, that's humankind. So God created man in, or as. The word in Hebrew is the word as. So, and there's a difference if you can mull over it, chew it up, or whatever, but there's a difference in making something in its image or as its image. So he says, so God created man as its image. As the image of God created he him. As the image of God created he him. Now I want to do something with this word image, but I also want to do something with this word God. And to do that, I went through these and I tried to throw away the ones that just wouldn't work with me so that I could they make these passages where you cannot get into them. But let me do this. Thank you, Celeste. Those are those ones that you got me.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I'm doing this on purpose as read because of association. Picture's worth 1,000 words. And many times I said something last week. I said words don't necessarily teach as much as actions teach. Many of you have, out of good intentions, said something that wasn't worth the flip. But your intentions were really good, wasn't it? My life's based on them things, you know, those accidents, those blunders, those things. But really what happens is what your walk is, the demonstration of who you are. That's what really teaches it's not just words. You remember, I give the illustration of, I tried to conform my children. My intentions were great, but my actions were horrible. I mean, I whipped them for things that weren't necessary, that I didn't need to correct them. Okay, I literally, I'm guilty. I whipped them. Things that I shouldn't have done, I did. Those were but my intentions were pure. So I said something last week about words don't necessarily teach. Words bring you to a place where you can find instructions, but actions teach. Walk. That's what really. So this emblem right here, this is a symbol that everybody's familiar with. We call it a cross. The reason I put it in red is simply because of our ideology, not necessarily its usage, but this is the oldest symbol that we have, probably to mankind. It's this symbol when we put a circle on it. When we take that symbol and we put a circle around it, the circle represents eternity or eternal. And a better word for that is timeless. It represents timeless or timelessness. And when we think about this figure we call God, most of us are thinking about an old man. So when it says you are created, that would be each one of us individually are created as God's image. Well, what is God? I'm asking you, who are you? What are you? And the only way I'm going to find out who you are or what you are, since you are as the image of God, I got to find out what God is. And if God is some kind of an old man out yonder somewhere, an old gray-headed guy out there, and I'm supposed to look like him or act like him and talk like him, you get upset. I get upset when I read about him in the Old Testament. I don't want to be like him. Hates women and don't love children. I don't want to be that way. You know, wants to crucify people or kill them because they don't do everything the way that he wants everybody to do it. Nobody wants to follow that, right? I mean, that's dictatorship. That's Saddam Hussein or whoever. Hillary or one of those. A little pun there. Anyway, and the only way they can sell any of that stuff to us is through deception, right? I mean, they first blind us, deceive us, and then they sell us these things. So, I'm asking a question. What is God? Who is God? Of course, this particular word, God, G-O-D, is Elohim. And most people know that. E-L-O-H-I-Y-M. That would be how you would kind of spell it in Greek. And we look, in Hebrew. And we look at it again in a minute. And of course, when you spell it this way, because of them, that right there, the mem, it would be just like doing this. It says gods. So everywhere God's name is mentioned in Genesis chapter 1, it's not God as a single individual. It's God's as in some plurality. Please hear that. Some plurality. What is this plurality? If it's God's as opposed to a single God, then what are these pluralities? And of course, all of the ancients knew this. Scriptures are full of this. The plurality was this right here. And you can see it everywhere in everything that there is. Here's your plurality. It was the 12 divisions of power. That's why you find so many 12s in Scripture. 12 is a key number. See, they're key numbers, which is all of them. Everyone's key, but it's key to the things that is being discussed. Like, for instance, in Genesis chapter 1, what is being discussed? What's being discussed is the creation of the building, the temple, the house, that this energy system we call God, which actually means powers, plural, be. That would be you and me. So these plural powers called God are in me as me. And that's difficult. I know it's difficult. So here are your 12 powers, which are actually the 12 astrological signs. And the sun passes through all of these signs every day and every year in different increments. But nevertheless, it does that. And of course, you know it's doing all of this. We're moving now into what we would call the fall, right? The weather begins to change. Why does that happen? Is there any reason behind that? And of course, the reason behind that is the tilt of the earth. It's as it tilts, so that the sun's not changing. The sun's still emanating with constant energy, power, right? But yet the earth begins to tilt. All of this has to do with you. See, and we don't know this, we don't recognize this. If we did, or as we do, this power, we begin to recognize, oh, this is what's going on inside me. This is where I'm at. This is what's happening. This is what's taking place inside my body, or inside me. So this word image, I'm going to put this word image because we talked about it, and I want to use it for just a little bit here in a minute. That's the Tesla, Tesada. That's called the Lamid. And this right here is called the final meal. And we're going to talk quite a bit this morning about the final meal, at least more about it than some of the others that we have. Now, and you might think, does this have anything to do with dreams? It has everything to do with dreams. And I'm going to show you why. This right here is the word that we would look at for the word image. This is the word for dreams. Can you see the similarity to the two words? This is the Hebrew word for dreams. This is the Hebrew word for image. Does you being in the image of God have anything to do with your dreams? It has everything to do with it. The only difference in the spelling of these two particular words is the very first glip, the very first character. This is 90, and this is 8. This is the Che'at, this is the Tassad. And what these words or glyphs mean, and the impact of them when you combine them together, is phenomenal. But if we don't know that, if we say, oh, I had a dream last night, then we won't know. Oh, I made it as the image of God. I don't know. So this is image, and this is dream. And of course, you know, when you talk about dreams, there's two characters in Scripture that we're going to talk about more than any. Probably you already know these two characters, and I want to show you what these two characters and what their dreams have in common. And what they have in common is this. Both of them. And you can't get away from it. When I say this, I'm talking about the astrological wheel. I'm talking about the 12 powers. I'm talking about the 12 tribes. I'm talking about the 12 disciples. I'm talking about the 12 foundation stones. I'm talking about the breastplate of the high priest and the 12 stones that hides the Urim and Thummim. See, these things we don't know. You know, nobody's ever taught you that you're made up of this wheel that you are, the physical manifestation of this wheel called astrology. Nobody ever told you that. That's all this book is about that we call the Bible. It is about this on every page of the book. And yet, you know what you've been told? I've been told? Probably taught it 40, 30 years ago. Stay away from astrology. You better watch that astrology stuff. That's of the devil. The devil sneak in there and get you now. He got you by the place it hurts, where you ain't going to be able to do anything. So those are the things that we are taught to believe, but we don't know. I made in the image of God. So you know what we did? We made God as the image of man. So what we did is we made us a man God that's an angry ruler. And most people are afraid to approach them. I don't blame them. I have no use for them either. Instead of realizing that that is not what God is. God is indescribable because He's everything. This is how God feels all and is in all at the same time. And yet He's everywhere and nowhere. Simply because God is all. God is everything. The gods are these called. Now I want to give you some stuff because the reason I got a cross in here is I've actually got 4 divisions of this. Gosh, this goes in so many different ways. Okay, you can clearly see these four divisions, can't you? If you ever wondered why there were four Gospels, the only reason there's four Gospels is because of these four divisions. Have you ever heard of this name right here? And all you have to do is put vowel points in this name right here. Have you ever heard of that name, JHVH? Which has never been a name. Do you know who changed it into a name? The translators. They say, how many of you remember reading or you heard that there was a name that the Jews never pronounced, they couldn't say it, and if they come and approach this name, they would do a cleansing and washing before, then they would go through the glyphs of it, and then they'd do a cleansing and a washing afterwards. You ever heard that? Well, that's true. It was called the unpronounceable name. Well, what did they do? Translators pronounced it. They thought, well, y'all need to know how to say this. Why do you need to know how to say it? It's not pronounceable. Well, we'll put some vowel points in. We'll put an E or A or O somewhere, and then we'll got us a word. Well, what word do we have? Jehovah. So, whoa, then what happens when we got a Jehovah? Now we made Jehovah a man. Didn't we? And then we gave Jehovah an advanced name and called him Jesus. Hello? Right? But yet it never was a name. It's not even mentioned until you get to Genesis 2:4. And all of a sudden, Genesis 2:4, we have the introduction to this, and it's not a name, it's glyphs. It's Hebrew glyphs. Yod, He, Vav, He. And what they mean and the power of them is the physical world is designed as a machine to manifest the Elohim. Or in other words, all of the powers that be. In other words, you can create a hell in the midst of a heaven and live there. You can do it. You know why? Because this creative energy is in you as you. And it can't not. It's just totally designed to be that way. And so you have so many things laid over this glyph, this astrological wheel. And the ancients knew it, and they had it in every culture on the face of the earth. It didn't matter if you went to the Aztec, to the Mayans. It didn't matter if you went to the Incas, or if you went to China, to the Buddhist, or to the Hindu in India, or to the Egyptians. It mattered not where you went. Every culture on the face of the earth has this same story, using different names to try to convey the energy of it. Using different characters. But those characters weren't literal or real historical people that lived. Those characters were things inside you. And if we make it personal and realize it's about me, then it begins to empower me to change me, to transform me. So, and we can go on and on with this as, how can I do this? So many different ways that I'd like to do. I want to do it this way. This one's clear because it's air. I don't have a pen, so I just wrote it up there, air. That's what that is. And so, how many are familiar with these four elements? Fire, earth, air, and water. Are you familiar with those elements? That's what you're made up of. How many of you ever heard of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen? That's what you're made up of. Anything I do, I can go all through Scripture and show you people that mean and represent these different things. These different characters, different things about their names, the way they're built, the way they're constructed, and the story around them. What the story is even about is about these different things. So we can also do it this way, because there are these four. How many of you have ever heard of the triune? These four, well, you can just go again, this one. And if you're in these signs, this is an attribute of your sign. So we can go again and all the way around. Fire, earth, air, and water. And if you'll look at where these signs fit, you'll see how that everything on the earth complies to it, follows it. I mean, you can take the months, and you'll see what's happening that month, and you'll recognize what's happening in that month. You know, when you get right here in July, fire, hottest time of the year, July, August, you get over here. And this is when the fire and the earth is doing this great work, producing the bounty, producing the harvest. I mean, everything in this and you notice those four: fire, earth, air, and water. Fire, earth, air, and water. Fire, earth, air, and water also represents three divisions. This is the Trinity. This is your triune God. So the three aspects of this triune God during the year are during the 12 months, are during the 12 cycles, are during the 12 angles, are during the 12 powers. And these 12 cycles, these 12 angles, these 12 powers are called the angels. They're also called the watchers. These watchers decree. That simply means that they issue forth different things. And they're doing it every day as well as they're doing it every year. You follow that? See how it all flows? So actually you have the four divisions. You have the three divisions of the four. You see that? Can y'all follow? Can you follow that? It's not complicated. It's real simple, and the more that you can put your brain around, you begin to see it, the more you can embrace it, the more you can embrace yourself. And the whole key about this, to embrace yourself, if you can know you empower you. The more you know you, the more you will empower you. And I had made a statement last week, or a week before. Let me see if I can find my note on that. Yeah, here we go. It's a little note I wrote here about 3 weeks ago. It says, we come here completely equipped with a tool and accessory kit. Now what I mean by that is you have everything you need when you came here. When you were released from the womb of your mom into this dimension, you were equipped. But now if you don't know how to use the equipment, it's just like taking and setting me down in front of a computer, and all I can do is push a few buttons, and I cannot use it to its potential. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. See, I don't know how to use myself to my potential. Why? I don't know me. If I can get acquainted with myself, and everybody's different. Every one of you is different. You see, I used me last week to show you, if we don't know your strong points and your weak points, if you don't know your ascendant and your descendant, if you don't know your positive and your negative. See, I'm born right here. I'm born right here, February the 19th. This is my ascendant. This is my sign, because the sun is from here, from the 25th of December, the sun is ascending. From June the 21st, June the 21st, the sun is descending. Does that until December the 21st. And then it rests. The only time of year that it rests, actually it totally stops. And so in the ancient cultures, in the ancient literature, since there's no movement at all in the sun, because there's movement from the 25th all the way around the pendulum to the 21st of December, there's movement. The sun is constantly moving. In other words, the days are either getting longer or the days are getting shorter. All the way around, but there it stops. On the 21st of December, it stops. And so, you know what they said? The sun was crucified and it dies. And then on the 25th of December, voila, it starts to move again. So it begins to ascend. So I'm born here, February the 19th. This is my ascending sign. Well, this is my descending sign. So you see, I have air and water, fire and earth, because I'm on a cough. I'm right directly on a cough. Now, I used this illustration from my granddaughter last week, Rachel, because Rachel, this would be November the 21st, and this is December the 21st. Rachel is born on December the 6th, so she's pretty close to being right here, a Sagittarius. That's where she's born. But this right here would be the twins, Gemini, and so if she knows about herself and her birth sign, she needs to know about her descendant sign or her opposite sign. Because you see, if you have this in your car, and it has this post right here, and this one says plus, and this one says minus. Can you get by with just one of them? No. Ain't gonna work. See, it don't work. You see, this one we can say this one's this way. This one's good. And this one's evil. And you'll say, oh, hell no, I don't want the evil. You got it. I mean, you got it. You see, it's like, no, I can't eat from this tree. That's our whole problem. That is our whole problem. We're stuck, and we're stuck in the mud. We can't seem to get anywhere because we can't embrace the whole thing. When we look at the New Testament scriptures and it talks about being saved, actually the word sozo in Greek means to be whole. This is whole right here. If I took the thing apart and I said, oh, we ain't going to have this side, you ain't going nowhere. You ain't going to work. If you aren't grounded, you can't go. You have to be grounded when you start to go. But when you put this ground back in it like it's supposed to be, and you begin to realize that it works this way, and listen to this, there's nothing wrong here. Oh, how could that possibly be? There's nothing wrong here. Can you create wrong? Yeah, you sure can. You can do all kinds of stuff with that. We have a book full of illustrations to show us. Here's what you can do, and here's what will be the result. This is what happens. And it's not rocket science to begin to look at it and realize, wait a minute. If I want to get to here, if I want to go to Daytona, I need to follow the signs. That's what these are. These are all signs. These are signs. Scripture constantly calls them signs or glyphs. Same thing. So that's why Paul says in Galatians chapter 4 that the story of Abraham and Sarah is not literal. It's not historical. It's allegorical. What is an allegory? An allegory is a symbol or a sign, or it's a story built that way. You know, we tried to sell the story of Santa Claus to our kids as, yes, he's real. And how many of them believed it for a few years? Or the story of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. It's real. It is a real story, but it's not real characters. But it's the story. The story, which is a myth. A myth is a story. It's a fabulous tale that when you can tell the tale the way the tale is meant to be told, the tale will energize you and release a power in you called a dream. What happens in the dream? Oh, chemicals are released in my body. Or, let me add you another word to that, a vision. Dreams and visions. When we go through and we start to look at these characters, which there are two main characters that have dreams and visions in the Scripture, it's amazing how singular their dreams and their visions are. Or at least what they're about. And you can see that. And again, and the reason I spelled these words up here is so that you can see the singularity in the words. Now, when you do gematria and you do the value of these, they come up with a little bit of different. You've got 690 and 30 would be 700 and what? 20?
Yeah.
And reduce it to its lowest common denominator would be 7, and 2 would be what?
9.
9. That's the tasaf, okay? And then this one would be 630 and 8, so it would be 638, right? Come on, mathematicians, y'all have it. 6 and 3 is 9.
Yep.
8 is 17.
Yep.
Reduced to its common denominator would be what? 8. Now, as we start to see the glyphs, and as we start to memorize the glyphs and understand what the glyphs are saying, then we'll have a better understanding of how they reduce to the lowest common denominator, how they deal with me. For instance, a dream has the number 8. The number 8 is this, che'at or he'at. And actually, it's what the sun does every year. You can Google this with your iPhone. All you got to do is Google it and just put the path of the sun. And it'll just come right up, and this is what it'll show you. That's what the path of the sun. And as the sun reaches these points, this point right here is here and here, and right here is up here and down here. Right? What does it mean? It means a perpetual or something to continue. So what happens if you are dreaming a dream? That dream is to perpetuate something. Or it maybe is to continue to either release or bind something inside you. Now, I mean, how many know people? I know it wasn't none of y'all, but somebody got stuck. And the dreams continually about, that was me. It wasn't none of y'all, but I just tell you, it was continually about, oh, I'm stuck there. Well, that's the whole value of a dream. When you reduce it to the most common denominator. Now, an image, when we come to the last glyph of an image and we come to the te'at actually means it's filled with feminine energy to reproduce itself. So this image would be just like, you remember the guy that did the cows in the Old Testament? And he painted, you remember he painted the thing so that the image would be different, and then the cows turned out the way the image was? You remember that? Y'all remember that story? See what happened? The feminine energy produced that. That's what it does in you. So when you have an image, if you have an image of yourself that's wrong and false, guess what it'll do? Constantly reproduce wrong or a false image of who you are. And that's exactly what's happened to most of us. We got stuck in the literalist idea of Christianity. So, but hallelujah, we're getting out of that, right? Amen. We're breaking free from that. So anyway, we come here completely equipped with the tool and accessory kit. And most of us aren't aware of this kit or this toolbox. And even if we're made aware of it, most of us don't know how to use the tools in it. And so the tool kit and accessory kit is a vital part of life, yet without the right instructions, the word instructions actually is the word discipline or the word correction, and it comes from the root word for foundation. So if our foundation is built on sand, that's false concepts and ideas, false images. If it's built on that, guess what happens? Storms in life are going to always come. I pray that we would eventually get that and try to grasp that and understand that. Storms in life will always come. Period. You can't. They just will. But what can you do to prepare yourself for it? Now, you remember Marvin when he started singing some of his songs. You remember Marvin changed the words of angels to angles. Because you see, these angles in the astrological wheel are the angels. So it's hard to get all 12 of the angels from the King James Bible unless you have some of the books that have been taken out. Like for instance, the book of Enoch will give you these 12 different angles or angels. And the book of Enoch is not a book about prophecy. Of course, we know it's taken out, right? There's so many books taken out, or so many books changed or deleted or whatever. I mean, literally hundreds, to be honest with you, when they compile this translation. But when we see all of these books, we begin to see the full picture. We see a better picture. These angles or angels begin to get clearer. So anyway, I kind of got a little bit off of what I really wanted to say to start with, and I'm just about to run out of time anyway, but I wanted to go ahead and lay this out for you, the Urim and the Thummim. So if you would just go with me, and let's look at the Urim and the Thummim Exodus, the book of Exodus, if you will, just turn over there real quickly. Because several, I know James and Marvin both were blown away and never heard of it, but let's just read it. The book of Exodus, this is beginning to talk about Exodus chapter 25 begins to introduce the building of the tabernacle in the wilderness. That tabernacle is also a representation of you. And by the way, if you look at that tabernacle, you will find that tabernacle laid out with 4 different corners. Inside that tabernacle courtyard, that's how that courtyard is laid out, and in each of these corners, north, south, east, and west, in each of these corners, there are 3. So what happens is they begin, again, it's all about this wheel, everything it's all about this wheel. So, and Moses is given these instructions, and these instructions were given to Moses, which is a hypothetical character. Actually, Moses, his name, Moshe, means drawn up out of water. That's you and me. So we are a water vessel. We're drawn up out of water. Water is a major, this glyph right here is water. That's the major building block of the physical body. They say now, usually they said you're made up of 80% water. Now they say you're about 99% water. You're just literally a water vessel. So when he starts to give everything about these dimensions, everything about the articles, everything about the furniture, everything about everything in it is about your physical body. Something about your body and how your body works. And so Moses starts that, and then when they start with the high priest, this is the one who goes in and out. This is the one, you know who your high priest is? Your high priest is your man of your spirit. He's also the king. He's the king and the priest. And you know, it tells you in Revelation very clearly that you are designed to rule in earth, period, as a king and a priest. That's who you are. So you're a king so that you can govern the natural things. You're a priest so that you can administer the spiritual things. And you do that to yourself. So after you get the tabernacle built and the articles and the furniture and all that, then he goes into the attire. Not only does he lay the tabernacle out with 12 foundations, then he begins to go to the costume that the priest wears. And he comes to this place right here in Exodus 28, and just this one verse about parts of this costume that the priest wears. Verse 30, 28:30 is, "Thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment." And by the way, judgment, right here, this is judgment. This is Libra. So, just real quickly, if you, let me take just a moment here and do this. Okay. This is a leg and this is a leg, okay. So this is the child in the womb of its mom. This is you. Everything about this, your head, Aries, the ram referring to your cerebrum, Sarah, Abram, Sarah, Abram. That's your upper brain. That's where you start. That's the throne of God. At the throne of God, in the middle of the throne, there's 24 elders. That's Revelation chapter 4. Middle of the throne, there's 20, that's your brain. Your upper brain has 12 paired cranial nerves. You have 12 nerves coming off this side and 12 coming off this side going into the spinal column called the 12 paired cranial. You know, there are 24. 24 elders sitting there. You think, well, that's an accident. Well, that's really a good accident, isn't it? No, there are no accidents. It's all on purpose. It's all about the same thing. And so that starts up here. This is Aries, the ram. The ram is just simply referring, you remember Abraham, that's what he did. He caught the ram in the bush. Starts up here, into fire. What is the fire? Well, you got to start with fire because fire is light. Because sun is the light, S-U-N is the light, it's the fire, is that creates and builds everything. So as you come around, and then this is Libra. And you remember what they say about Libra? They do it this way. The scales of justice, right? And what you have with Libra, if you pay attention, if you have a skull or a brain, this is your brain. At least this is how most people, that's all you got in your brain. Most people's brains cut off right there. It's not true. That's your brain. Your brain and your spinal column are one piece. And now then, quantum science has already jumped far enough to say what your gut is as important and has a brain of its own. Really, when they make the connection and they connect the dots, they will really begin to realize the serpent on the pole is the brain. It is that which knows right from left, or in other words, raw and total, good or evil. You see what I'm saying? We have the word evil, and we have advanced it to a place that wasn't being used back then. It was being used for right and left. So if I'm taking left, and if you're left-handed, then you're evil. No, you're just left-handed. In other words, right and left, there's nothing wrong. Amen? So this column right here goes all the way down to your pelvic bone. And your pelvic bone, right here, this is where it's at. It's in your pelvic. So it's called the scales, they call it the scales of judgment. It should have been called the scales of balance. Why should it have been called the scales of balance? Because when you think of judgment, you think of right or wrong. But when you think of balance, you don't think right and wrong. You think if I can't balance, I can't walk. And most of the people who are filled with judgment can't walk. Why? Because they've lost their balance. This was never supposed to be the scales of judgment. Should have been the scales of balance, because that's what the pelvic is all about. It's about balance. And the brain sits right there, right there at it. You know, so you can see that. Everybody can see that. So right here he says in verse 30, thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and Thummim, and they shall be upon Aaron's heart when he goeth in before the Lord, and Aaron shall bear the judgment or the balance of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually. So, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the picture of this breastplate, but this breastplate has 12 different stones on it. Each stone represents one of these 12 angles, which these 12 angles represents the 12 sons of Jacob, which are the same thing as the 12 apostles. A post. A post. Each sign has a post to introduce it. Apostle. So each sign is an apostle. Each one of the apostles' names fits in the sign. Each one of the children of Israel fits in the sign. And every bit of this is on the breastplate of the high priest, which is you. Which what is it saying? It's saying every bit of it's right here in your heart. In your heart is where you judge or balance your situation. Right? You do it in here. And if we do it by the pointing of a finger, whether that finger is pointed at you, or what did one guy says, if you got one pointed at somebody, you have three pointed back at yourself. Which is pretty much the way it goes. But this is the Urim and the Thummim. And of course, they asked me last week, Mark said, it's like rolling with the dice. I said, that's exactly what it is. And the children of Israel used this method constantly when they were, it's like I think maybe Date's Notes or Larkin, I can't remember, one of the Bible scholars says that they suspected that the Urim and Thummim were two stones that on one of the stones was yes, and on the other stone was no. So if you consulted the Urim and the Thummim, and that's what they were doing, the high priest would go in to consult the Urim and the Thummim. David did it. Saul did it. I mean, we can go through Scripture. I can show you 20, 30 places where they did that to see, well, what did the Lord want? Or in other words, what was Jehovah, what was this wheel looking for? And if you want to narrow it down to a yes or a no, I think that's a good way to narrow it down. So these dice were, yeah, it's a good thing, it's okay. No, maybe not today. But maybe tomorrow. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's what the Urim and the Thummim, that's how they were used. They were used in this fashion. Okay, let me move on real quickly, and I'm going to close with this right here. Go with me to the book of Genesis, chapter 37. In closing, I'm going to just use this one verse of Scripture. Genesis chapter 37. And all right, and I know y'all are familiar with this story, but I want to read it to you. Genesis chapter 37. And this is about, Jacob's name. Y'all remember the story of Jacob, right? Jacob had, 12 sons, and his name got changed. Y'all remember that? So Jacob's name was changed to this. If you look at the first book of the Bible, it's called I'm just going to spell it. Genesis. That's how we would say it. But it's actually Genesis. And what the word Genesis simply means, the generation of Isis. Isis was the female god of the Egyptians. She was very, very popular. Ra, was mother. Ra was father. And El was God or power. And it's actually used that way throughout Scripture. So when you take this name, of course now this is designated as a nation, right? Now you got to go to Genesis here clearly. Everybody, any Bible theologian or student, it doesn't matter, can simply go in there and read it very clearly. And God says, your name's not going to be called Jacob. In other words, you're not going to be called just a low-level worm, earthling. That's what Jacob means, deceiver. You are. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. You are a deceiver. You really are in your flesh. That's how your carnal mind is negative and it's weighty. It's made out of darkness and dense matter. So you know what? Since it's water, you know what water always does? If we poured water in here and there's a low place in here, what do you think the water would do? It's going to seek it out. If you think you won't seek to a low place, you're wrong. Because that's just the nature of the physical body. It's constantly going to pull to that low place because it's water. That's not wrong. You'll learn to swim. Because if you get in water over your head, you're going to have to swim. So when we realize these Israel was a designation of the astrological wheel. Because that's exactly how the Egyptians used this term. Both of these terms, whether they were using the term of as Isis, or Ra, as... And you know how they translated this word in Hebrew? Evil. That's the word for evil. It's also the word for right. R-I-G-H-T. It's also the word for friend. It's also the word for lover. That's how it's used in your Bible. In your Hebrew Bible, it's used these ways. I'm saying we have a misunderstanding of ancient words. And it's time to come back to an understanding of these words. And as we do, then what does it do? It rewrites me. It writes the book of my life. It rewrites who I am. I begin to understand me in a greater light. Okay. And the reason it's used this way, because if it's the right brain is where the seed comes from. S-E-E-D. Which is also the word. That's what I'm using right now. Spewing out of my mouth. Seeds. Words. It's called Father. Or source. Or power or energy. Da-da-da-da-da. And on and on and on. So right here, in this, let's just look at verse 5. Joseph dreamed a dream. You're going to remember the story, right? Right in this story, right here at the beginning, at the end of this story, at the beginning, you remember what happened to Joseph? His father had made him a coat of what?
Many coats.
I reckon there's 7 of them. What do you think? If you guessed, you're right. You know why? And it tells you over in Psalms about this coat of many colors. In Psalms 134 or 137, I'm not sure exactly which one, it tells you that that's how God wove you in the womb of your mother as a garment of many colors. It tells you that very clearly. So now what are we talking about? Again, the story is talking about you. So this story has got you in it and all over it. So Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told his brethren, and they hated him the more. And he said unto them, Here I pray you this dream which I have dreamed. And behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dream and for his words. Verse 9, And he dreamed yet another dream, and he told his brethren and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Now, whoa, wait just a minute. The sun, the moon, and the moon, and it's always about these, the sun and the moon, sun and the moon, and the 12 brothers. The 11 bowed down to the one. Can you not see the astrology in this story? I mean, it's just written all over it. So what is the astrology in this story? It is the Elohim. It's God producing its image constantly. And this is done out of this dream. And that's what he begins to say. And he told his dream to his father, verse 10, and he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, What is this dream that you dream? Shall I and your mother and your brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to you to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed what he said. Daddy heard it. Now this is a dream, and it's got astrology written all over it. And of course, to go on in the story here of Joseph and his coat of many colors, right after this, you remember what happened? His brothers dug a big hole in the ground and took his coat away from him, smeared blood on it, threw him in that hole in the ground, and then sold him to the Egyptians. Y'all remember the story? And that's a phenomenal story again about you and your dilemma or in the pit of your, wherever your low place is, but you got to remember what come out of that. He come out of that as the key man in the kingdom, and guess who come and bowed to him? His brothers and his daddy, his entire family. That's how the story goes on. That's the story of Joseph. Then when we come over to the story of Daniel, Then we have the same story, but in Daniel, it looks like he's got a dream from Nebuchadnezzar. Nebo actually is the little child in you that wants to be the big man in you. And how many of you know that little child sometimes kicks and screams, I want it. And you think, hell, to shut him up, I'm going to go ahead and let him have what he wants. Candy bar you can have. Or you can say, no, you're going to get an apple. I don't want an apple. Da, 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 da. Same story, told differently to emphasize different things about you and about me. And I want to dig into these stories and these dreams and how that every one of us, you dream every night. You might not remember it, you may not know, but what's happening in those dreams? Is the Elohim, are the powers, the energies, the angles, are they speaking to me, in me, through me? And I would say absolutely without doubt. So I want to just close by giving you this Joseph's name. I want to tell you both of them names, Joseph and Daniel, but just Joseph this morning. Joseph is especially representative of the realm of forms. He was clothed with a coat of many colors. He was a dreamer and an interpreter of dreams. The phenomenon was his field of action. Among primal faculties, the mind Joseph represents imagination. This faculty has the power to throw onto the screen of visibility in substance and life forms every idea that the mind can conceive. While the imagination is a very necessary faculty and is powerful and productive, yet it is belittled and often derided and scorned by other faculties of the mind while they are unawakened spiritually. While they are functioning in intellectual consciousness instead of true spiritual understanding. So this gives you an idea of Joseph, you Josephs, you dreamers, and your dreams, and how they are made to stimulate you. They will stimulate you. They'll empower you. They'll heal you. They'll do tremendous work for you. Okay, I'm just going to cut off there. Any questions or any?
Well, now you just put a new slant on the whole, and we've talked about this many times here with the rainbow. You put a whole different slant now on the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, that.
Because in essence, wasn't it all her dream?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you'd be shocked. We'll all be shocked as we begin to see more and more into what the dream is and how the dream and the image, how the root of both words, and what that root means, and how that root is used. It's phenomenal. So